You can't change who you really are. Underneath all this fluff and crap is me, very, I was about to say really solid.
16 is the age of wild dreams, and Cher was no different. A teenage girl who only wanted love, protection, and someone to hold her hand through the storms. But little did she know, she was stepping straight into a nightmare she'd never expected. Her marriage to Sonny was anything but happy. From the hottest couple in town to renowned exes, how did it all fall apart? What really happened?
I think I hear those two bozo maintenance men coming.
Oh no, not the ones with the cold hands.
This is the truth behind Sonny Bono that Cher finally revealed. 16-year-old Cher may have become a worldwide icon, but her story didn't start with glitter, fame, and screaming fans. It began in the small desert town of El Centro, California, on May 20th, 1946, when Cheryl Sarkeesian came into the world. From the very beginning, her life was a mix of hardship, longing, and survival that would shape the bold, unshakable woman the world came to know as Cher. Her father, John Sarkeesian, was an Armenian-American truck driver. He struggled with gambling, drugs, and his own demons, which meant he was rarely present in Cher's life. Her mother, Georgia Holt, was the opposite: bright, beautiful, and ambitious. Georgia was a model and actress with Irish, English, German, and Cherokee roots, carrying with her the kind of dreams that Los Angeles thrives on. But the picture-perfect family, that never existed. Cher's paternal grandparents were survivors of the Armenian genocide. By the time Cher was only 10 months old, her parents' marriage had completely fallen apart. Her father left, but not before doing something that would scar her and her mother forever. He placed Cher in an orphanage. Imagine being too little to understand, but growing up knowing your father left you behind. Georgia was allowed to visit once a week, but here's the heartbreaking part. She could only see her baby through a glass window. No touching, no cuddles, just staring at her little girl from behind glass. Both mother and daughter carried that wound, and it's safe to say it shaped Cher's fear of abandonment throughout her life. Things didn't get easier. In 1951, Georgia married actor John Southall, and for a while Cher thought maybe she'd finally get that father figure she was craving. The two even had a daughter together, Jorgan, who became Cher's half-sister. But that marriage crumbled too. Southall, whom Cher once described as her real father and good-natured, had a darker side when alcohol was involved. By the time Cher was 9, that chapter was over. Her mother didn't stop searching for stability. Georgia married and divorced multiple times, dragging her kids across the country from New York to Texas to California, chasing jobs, chasing love, and sometimes just chasing survival. Money was tight. Cher later remembered using rubber bands to hold her shoes together. But Georgia never gave up on her Hollywood dream. She worked as a waitress to keep food on the table while pursuing acting jobs. Sometimes that hustle spilled over to her daughters, who found themselves with tiny TV roles on shows like The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. School was never exactly Cher's safe place. By the time she hit 5th grade, she was already standing out. She organized a class performance of the musical Oklahoma, and even played male roles when the boys refused. She wasn't waiting for anyone's approval. If something needed to get done, Cher just did it. At just 9, it was unusually low for a girl her age. Instead of hiding it, she leaned into it, though at times it made her feel different. Hollywood was her escape, and she idolized stars like Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's. She'd mimic Hepburn's unconventional outfits and that bold, "I don't care what you think" energy. She also admired legends like Marlene Dietrich, Bette Davis, and Katharine Hepburn. But still, something nagged at her. There weren't many dark-haired actresses in the spotlight back then. In fact, Cher once admitted that in Disney movies, all the villains and evil queens had dark hair. She couldn't find anyone on screen to look at and say, "That's me." As a child, Cher dreamed big, but those dreams clashed with feelings of insecurity. She thought of herself as unattractive, untalented, and somehow less than the world around her. But despite those insecurities, she held on to one single burning thought. I'll be famous. That was it. She didn't know how or when, but fame was her destiny. And in her heart, she believed it. Then came another twist in her young life. In 1961, Georgia married Gilbert LaPierre, a bank manager who seemed stable compared to her previous husbands. LaPierre officially adopted Cher and Jorgan, giving them a new last name, LaPierre, and enrolling them in Montclair College Preparatory School, a fancy private school in Encino. Coming from a modest background, she felt completely out of place in this upper-class environment. But when she felt like she didn't belong, she didn't shrink. She stood out even more. Cher's striking looks and outgoing personality made her unforgettable. Even in high school, she was already performing, singing for her classmates during lunch breaks, pulling bold fashion moves like wearing a midriff-bearing top and always making sure people noticed her. Teachers, on the other hand, weren't as impressed. She excelled in French and English but struggled badly in other subjects. Later, she discovered she had dyslexia, which explained why academics never clicked. But Cher's mind was already elsewhere. While the other kids worried about homework or football games, she was daydreaming about red carpets, stages, and fame. Every struggle, every heartbreak, every move across the country was setting the stage for something extraordinary. This wasn't just a girl with dreams. This was a girl with destiny. At just 16, Cher decided she was done with school and home. She packed up her life and moved out of her mother's house, chasing something bigger. She wasn't going to wait around for fame to knock. She went looking for it. Living with a friend, she took acting classes, danced in nightclubs along Hollywood's Sunset Strip, and did whatever it took to put herself in the right rooms. And Cher was fearless. She didn't hesitate to walk up to anyone, performers, managers, agents, and just say, "Hi, I'm Cher." That boldness is what led her to Sonny Bono. It was November 1962, and Cher's life was about to change forever. She was in a coffee shop, and that's when Sonny walked in. He was 11 years older, wearing a mohair suit and a mustard-colored shirt with a crisp white collar. Not exactly Hollywood's idea of Prince Charming, but for Cher, it felt like magic. She felt that moment like it was straight out of West Side Story. She thought it was like when Tony met Maria. Everybody disappeared, and it was just the two of them. But, well, Sonny wasn't actually interested in Cher at first. In fact, he had his eyes on her friend. But fate has a funny way of moving things around. Not long after, Cher's friend moved out, and she suddenly had nowhere to stay. That's when Sonny made an offer. She could live with him, but only if she agreed to be his housekeeper. Now, if you know Cher, you know this. She never really scrubbed floors or did dishes. She agreed, yes, but cleaning? Not her thing. Still, the arrangement worked. She had a place to stay, and he had, well, Cher. And while Sonny wasn't attracted to her at the beginning, the bond between them was undeniable. Through Sonny, Cher was introduced to Phil Spector, the legendary producer behind some of the biggest hits of the 1960s. Sonny got her gigs as a backup singer on classics like You've Lost That Lovin' Feelin' by the Righteous Brothers and Be My Baby by the Ronettes.
Baby, don't go. Pretty baby, please don't go.
Spector even produced her very first single, Ringo, I Love You, which she recorded under the name Bonnie Jo Mason. The problem? Her deep voice confused radio programmers, who thought it was a man singing a love song to Ringo Starr. Many stations refused to play it, assuming it was a gay anthem. Just like that, her first attempt at solo fame fizzled. But Sonny saw something in Cher that nobody else did. He believed in her when she didn't even believe in herself. Cher was painfully shy on stage, but Sonny had a solution. He started performing alongside her, not just to boost her confidence, but to convince her and the world that she belonged in the spotlight. At first, they tried their luck as a duo called Caesar and Cleo. The name didn't exactly scream rock and roll, and their first singles flopped. But then came 1965. Sonny wrote a song that would change everything, I Got You, Babe. Suddenly, Sonny and Cher weren't just another struggling act, they were the act. The song shot up the charts, and overnight, they went from nobodies to stars. Their partnership was magnetic. Sonny wrote, produced, and managed. Cher stood center stage with that voice, that look, and that undeniable charm. Together, they were unstoppable. Songs like The Beat Goes On in 1967 cemented them as icons of the era. Their relationship deepened too. By 1964, they had a mock wedding ceremony, though they didn't legally marry until 1969. But for Cher, the bond went far beyond romance. She saw Sonny almost as a savior. Having been abandoned by her real father, she craved protection, stability, and someone to look up to. Sonny filled that role, sometimes more like a father figure than a passionate lover. Cher even admitted later that it wasn't love at first sight, but something else entirely. It was something she had never felt before. Her mother noticed it too. Georgia believed Cher was drawn to Sonny because he reminded her of her father, Johnny. The resemblance was uncanny, but Cher didn't see it that way. She just knew she felt safe. And when a young girl feels that deeply about someone, there's no stopping her. So what did she love most about Sonny? Well, how different he was from anyone else. And he made her laugh. And they had a dream. That dream was enough to keep them pushing, even when things got tough. Sonny pushed Cher to continue as a solo artist, but her stage fright was still a huge hurdle. To ease her nerves, she looked at Sonny during performances, using him almost as a shield. She sang to the people through him. They kept grinding, releasing singles under Caesar and Cleo before officially signing with Reprise Records. Hits started rolling in again. Cher's solo single, All I Really Want to Do in 1965, charted both in the US and the UK. Her debut solo album did well, followed by even bigger hits like Bang Bang, My Baby Shot Me Down in 1966. That song alone sold over 1 million copies. By the mid-1960s, Cher was becoming a star in her own right. Their duo was still hot, but Cher's star was burning brighter by the day. Things were going well, maybe too well. Fame, fortune, family. It looked perfect from the outside. But behind the glitter and gold, cracks were starting to form. And soon, the dream that Sonny and Cher built together would show its first signs of breaking. By the late 1960s, the Sonny and Cher magic wasn't working anymore. The charts that once welcomed their sweet, folky sound now belonged to heavy hitters like Jefferson Airplane, Cream, and Led Zeppelin. Cher loved this new era of loud guitars and edgy rebellion. She wanted to evolve, to keep up with the times, but Sonny refused. He clung to their old formula, insisting their clean, wholesome act was enough, and that was the problem. America was in the middle of a sexual revolution. Rock stars were singing about free love and experimenting with drugs, while Sonny and Cher were, well, kind of square. They didn't party. They didn't embrace the anything goes culture. They were married, faithful, and against drugs. To rebellious kids of the 60s, that was boring. No wonder their fans started slipping away. They tried to win them back with a movie, Good Times. But it flopped. Cher also experimented with her music, releasing the album Backstage in 1968, but it failed to chart, and by 1969, both Cher and Sonny, and Cher, were dropped from their labels. Suddenly, the golden couple of pop music seemed like yesterday's news. Still, Cher wasn't ready to give up. She went to Muscle Shoals to record 3614 Jackson Highway without Sonny's involvement, and critics later called it one of the best albums of her career. But Sonny hated it. He didn't want her to grow independent, so he blocked her from recording more music. It was becoming clear that he wanted control. Sonny was seeing other women and Cher knew it. He begged her to marry him officially, promising to settle down and start a family. And that's when Cher gave birth to their child, Chaz, and she finally agreed. But even marriage couldn't fix what was already broken. That same year, Sonny made another desperate move to save their careers. He wrote and produced a film called Chastity, starring Cher. They poured $500,000 into the project, even mortgaging their home. But when the movie bombed, they were left with massive debt, over $190,000 in back taxes. Professionally, it was the lowest point of their careers. Personally, it wasn't much better. To survive, Sonny and Cher reinvented themselves as nightclub performers. At first, their act bombed too. Crowds heckled them, but Cher heckled right back. Suddenly, the banter between them became the highlight of the show. Audiences loved it. TV executives noticed, and before long, Sonny and Cher had a brand new gig, the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour. This was the turning point. Debuting in 1971, the show turned them into America's favorite couple. Their comedy sketches, their duets, and of course Cher's flawless Bob Mackie gowns drew in over 30 million viewers every week. Everyone wanted what Sonny and Cher had, or at least what they thought they had. But the more America fell in love with their perfect family, the more cracks were forming behind the curtain. Sonny had started to change. He became colder, more controlling. He didn't like Cher hanging out with their band. He didn't like her going out alone. He wanted her world to revolve around him. But one member of the band, a guitarist named Bill, caught Cher's attention. One night, after a show, Bill kissed her, and in that moment, Cher felt something she hadn't felt in years. Word eventually got back to Sonny, and the confrontation that followed changed everything. When Sonny asked her what she wanted, Cher shocked him and herself with her answer. She wanted to sleep with Bill. She didn't mean it literally. What she wanted was escape. Saying those words was her way of blowing everything up. She thought if she did this, it would be over. They're not gonna be able to be Sonny and Cher anymore. The cracks widened. The network and producers were terrified she'd quit and destroy the show. They offered her anything to stay. Cher didn't hesitate. She said she wanted her own place in Malibu and $5,000 a month. Freedom, however, came at a cost. While Sonny and Cher kept up appearances for the cameras, Cher discovered a devastating truth. Her new boyfriend, record executive David Geffen, got hold of her contract and showed her the fine print. Everything they'd built together, every penny they'd earned, it wasn't hers. Sonny owned 95% of the company, and his lawyer owned the remaining 5%. It was called Cher Enterprises, but she owned nothing. They worked together for almost 12 years, and she had nothing. By late 1972, their relationship was essentially over, though they stayed legally married to protect their careers. They even lived in the same house while openly seeing other people. Sonny wrote in his diary, "The public still thinks we are married, and that's the way it has to be." But Cher couldn't play pretend forever. In January 1974, she won a Golden Globe for the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour. The next month, Sonny filed for separation. A week later, Cher filed for divorce, accusing him of involuntary servitude and withholding her rightful earnings. Their show was canceled soon after. Sonny tried to move on with his own series, The Sonny Comedy Review, but it flopped within 13 weeks. Without Cher, the magic was gone. And when Cher confronted him about everything, she asked the question that had haunted her. "When was the moment you thought this would be a good idea?" He said that he always knew she'd leave him. And just like that, the golden couple was over. The picture-perfect marriage America adored was nothing more than an illusion. Yet somehow, despite the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the lies, Cher and Sonny managed to remain friends long after their marriage ended. By 1973, Sonny and Cher's marriage was all but done. In fact, Sonny admitted it in his own diary. "Connie and I live together as husband and wife, but my public wife is still Cher to maintain all the things I want right now. That's the way it has to be." That was Sonny, always putting business first, even in his private life. And Cher just shrugged it off. "We had a weird relationship," she said. "I don't expect anybody to understand." Weird was an understatement. David helped her break free from Sonny's ironclad contract. The divorce was brutal, fought in the courts and in the tabloids. But in June 1975, Cher won custody of Chaz, and her marriage to Sonny was officially over. Free, but still reeling, Cher tried to reset. She signed a massive $2.5 million deal with Warner Brothers Records and set out to prove herself. Her first album for them, Stars, was deeply personal, inspired by singer-songwriters like Joni Mitchell and James Taylor. Critics were divided. Some praised her for taking risks and showing real talent. Others dismissed it, saying Cher didn't have the rock credibility to pull it off. Commercially, it tanked, but decades later, fans would rediscover it, calling it one of her hidden gems. And while her career was in flux, her love life was chaos. Just 4 days after her divorce from Sonny, Cher shocked the world by marrying Greg Allman of the Allman Brothers Band. Their romance was passionate, messy, and fast. Within 9 days, she filed for divorce, citing his heroin and alcohol problems. A month later, they reconciled. Soon, Cher was pregnant with their son, Elijah Blue. But even while pregnant with Greg's baby, Cher reunited with Sonny for a revival of the Sonny and Cher show. Why? Because their chemistry was undeniable on stage. And because on stage, there was no marriage, there was no discord. You couldn't cut it with a chainsaw. Fans loved it. In fact, in 1976, Mego Toys released Sonny and Cher dolls, and Cher's doll outsold Barbie. She was officially bigger than America's most famous plastic blonde, but the hits weren't coming. Under Warner's watch, Cher released I'd Rather Believe in You and Cherished. Both bombed. Critics were ruthless. One called her voice dreary and the music atrocious. By the late 70s, Cher was exhausted. She was a single mom, broke despite her fame, and desperate to find her footing. So was this the end of the era? Did she finally give up on her dream to become the top of the world? Well, no. She reinvented herself. Again. In 1979, she dropped her last name legally and became just Cher. No Bono, no Allman, just Cher. She embraced the disco craze. Signing with Casablanca Records, she released Take Me Home, complete with a cover that featured her in a skimpy, glittering Viking outfit. The image was bold, daring, and sexy, and it worked. The title track was a massive hit. The album went gold, and Cher was back on top. And yet, she wasn't satisfied. In 1980, she tried once more to be a rock star. She formed a band called Black Rose with her boyfriend guitarist Les Dudek. To avoid overshadowing them, she chopped off her iconic long hair, adopted a punk-inspired look, and refused to take top billing. But critics didn't buy it. How dare Cher sing rock and roll? They sneered. The band's one album flopped, and by 1981, Black Rose was over. Still, Cher wasn't slowing down. At the same time, she was headlining a grueling residency at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, 2 shows a night, 7 nights a week, for 3 straight years. The money was great, $300,000 a week, but the schedule was brutal. Eventually, the residency evolved into her first solo tour, the Take Me Home Tour, which spanned North America, Europe, South Africa, and Australia. Cher was everywhere, but still, her albums weren't sticking. She teamed up with Meat Loaf on Dead Ringer for Love, but her own new wave album, I Paralyze, sank without a trace. Looking back, Cher admitted she was lost. Sonny had made every decision for her. She knew how to sing and how to be a mother. She didn't know anything else. For years, Sonny had been her anchor, even if he also chained her down. Without him, she was free, but she was also drifting. Meanwhile, Sonny had reinvented himself too. He opened a restaurant, and Cher even showed up at the opening to support him. He would go on to become the mayor of Palm Springs, then a U.S. congressman. But even years later, both admitted the breakup still haunted them. Sonny confessed that he enjoyed the power of Sonny and Cher so much that it took years and years to let go. Cher said that if he had just agreed to split Cher Enterprises down the middle, 50-50, she never would have left him. That's how close they were to making it work. And then came tragedy. On January 5, 1998, Sonny Bono died in a skiing accident. The news devastated Cher. Even after years of distance, fights, and failed love stories, Sonny was still the man who had defined so much of her life. She spent days writing his eulogy, wanting to capture everything: the love, the pain, the memories. At his funeral, she stood before the world and spoke from her heart. She recalled a section from Reader's Digest called "The Most Unforgettable Character I Ever Met." For her, that person would always be Sonny.